All right, guys, I have a young hitter for you this morning. We're going to take a look at and do some hitting analysis, kind of break down the swing as I would if I was working with this hitter in a live situation. So here we have an in-game scenario, and I like these because we get the true movements. So if you do send me clips and you have this would be, I think this would probably be the furthest away you would want to be filming from. But if you have something like this is great to look at. Batting practice is fine, and then obviously tee work would be the least preferable, but it still works. So this will give us a good idea of the mechanics of the four hitting standards I teach. So when we watch this guy, we're going to start with those first two movements. So I do like some things about what this hitter does, and I'll point those out. And there's some things that I think are very common in the 12, 13-year-old hitting age range that I think occur, and I think I'll point those out for you so you can kind of begin to work with your own hitter and work on fixing those common flaws. So first things first, I like to take a look at, in fact, I always take a look at the lower half first. And specifically what I'm looking for is in the early movements of this stride phase, I'm watching to see if he maintains some good balance on the backside. And if you're taking a look at his back knee, it's really clear that that's occurring because he's not letting the weight that he is stacked right here, he's not letting that weight dump forward. As you see his stride foot goes forward, you don't see this bend in the back leg unbending too quickly. And so he kind of cushions that landing as he's beginning to approach the dirt with his front foot. And that will transfer into some good energy in a minute. But that's the first thing I'm looking for. One, are the hips moving during the stride phase? And that's clear by this video that is occurring. And secondly, while those hips are moving, can we control the balance? And so those two pieces are in place. I like those. I like the movement of this young hitter. Where things start to break down is what happens as he approaches his landing with his heel. If you notice at this point, he is closed off to the pitcher. The hips really haven't rotated. The chest is closed. The shoulder is in. And so this is what I would call a closed position. But as he approaches that landing, watch his front hip and then watch his front shoulder. Things begin to open up. And as he touches down, he is fully blown open the hip and the shoulder. And this is going to cause all sorts of issues in bat speed and plate coverage and in power in the rest of the swing. So because he has landed with those hips opened, and because those hips have then pulled the upper half prior to him really engaging with the hands, then he's got a synchronization issue where the lower half is ready to go and is actually ahead of the upper half. And that'll cause what we call bat drag, and I'll point that out for you in a minute. So what we need to do here is, for this young guy, is we need to get him to land in a position that with his hips that look more like this. And so if you advance this video, do you see how they begin to open here? We need to bring that hip back close. So what I would do, and what I do with athletes that have this issue, is I'll break the swing into two segments. I'll let him do the load and stride and then stop and totally erase all momentum. But the point is simply to get him to feel where his hips are. And then if he checks and his hips are closed and they're in this position, then I'll let him then at this point finish the rest of his swing, obviously slowly, because we, again, have taken away some of that momentum. So he's not going to have the type of energy that being able to be created at that point. I'll let him do that a handful of times, and then I'll start reducing the length of the pause to where he's checking to see where his hips are. And then we're asking all sorts of questions about how he feels. How does the energy feel? Does he feel more powerful? And eventually he'll start to recorrect that hip angle. I should say that the hips landing in this position strike is not necessarily an absolute incorrect movement. I have seen big league hitters that will land here and yet keep their chest and shoulder closed off, and then the rest of the swing will progress naturally. But with young guys, typically they lack the strength and body control at that point, and so more often than not, I'm recorrecting that front side mechanics to get them to do better in the second half of the swing. All right, so those are the first two. Well, I should say the second hitting standard then would be where the energy is being created from. If I let this swing play on, if I let this play on loop a couple times, it's pretty easy to see that the back knee is driving forward into that pitch. You can see that actually it will pull the foot forward, and then on contact, the foot and my angle doesn't even look like it's on the ground. And if it is, it's very light. Very clear that he's not keeping, he's actually transferring the energy. And so this is a very powerful lower half when that upper half is, when that front side is much more controlled. So everything lower half minus that front side opening, I like, and I think that's an easy correction compared to some of the other issues I've seen with lower half mechanics. Okay, moving on. Standard 3 occurs in the upper half as soon as the heel hits the ground. What we want here is for the shoulders to be rotating with the hands, and specifically as the shoulders rotate in a circular fashion, and that front shoulder elevates maybe a little bit as he rotates, the hands will move directly forward. If they delay, if they come outward, that is not connectivity that we're looking for. We're looking for the hands to match the shoulder rotation and to be in unison with them. And so as I continue to pause and unpause, you notice that because that front side had opened, that has allowed there to be this disconnection. And so the upper half in this scenario is much ahead of the front side upper half is much ahead of the back side. The barrel, the bat isn't really being engaged, even though the shoulder is beginning to rotate. That creates this swing that you'll see as very circular. It's a very round swing. It's a very long swing. And what we want to do to correct that is first and foremost, get the lower half to control the hips. And then that will allow the shoulders to rotate with the bat coming forward easily. Excuse me. So what you see here is called bat drag, as I mentioned earlier, and that is where the elbows are actually dragging the barrel forward. In this position, you kind of see those elbows leading the way. There's no power here. There's a disconnect in the body. There's a hard time pulling the ball into the gaps, pushing the ball into the gap, and plate coverage is horrible as the barrel moves around the strike zone. So inside pitches are rough, and outside pitches are rough as well unless you time it appropriately. So you're causing all sorts of issues when you have a long upper half. So we got to bring that upper half back, and we have to engage the hands and shoulders together. Secondly, I want you to take a look as those hands begin to move. When he begins his stance, you see the barrel is upright, and the barrel stays upright as he's moving into the stride. But as he approaches the heel strike, you watch the barrel begin to fade backwards towards the dugout. If the barrel does that, you're going to create all sorts of force that is coming towards us, the camera, first, and then directed towards the pitcher secondly. That's a waste of energy because you have a misdirection and a misguidance of bat path. And so we can't let that barrel collapse back over the shoulder. And one of the easiest ways to correct that is fixing the front side, because it tends to bring the bat this way. If we can get that barrel to be upright and then slightly tilted back over the helmet, then I think we're going to be in better shape. And that should still be upright in the ground. If you take a look, if you go to YouTube and type in Mike Trout slow motion hitting mechanics, what you're going to find is a good posture about what I've been describing here. And you'll see that barrel will be back up over, not engaged yet. And then as the barrel engages, we have another error, and that is because the force comes outward first, we get that long swing. And so that, as I've described earlier, is not what we want. And that, in turn, will kill the fourth hitting standard, which is extension through the strike zone. You notice he's on contact in the strike zone, but then quickly you'll see that barrel cut left and he's out of the strike zone. What if the pitch is a curveball? What's a changeup? What if he mistimes it? There's all sorts of errors just with the timing piece alone that are caused because of a long swing. So better extension can work if the upper half is in unison, and that can work if that front side has not blown open prior to hit strike or heel strike. And so that's why when you're working with hitters, avoid jumping around. It's so important that we work with the lower half and make sure it's right before we are tempted to fix upper half mechanics. So if I'm just watching this kid swing, it's pretty clear if I was watching this in the live scenario and I knew what I was looking for, that I would see a hole in the upper half, a long swing. I can't tackle that yet until I figure out what is causing that. Is it purely an upper half issue, or is it related to what's on the lower half? So hope this helps you a little bit. Go ahead and take a look at your hitters and make sure that you see the front side under control as I described. And as you pull up and watch that Mike Trout video, you'll see that the bat speed will improve, and connectivity and plate coverage will improve when that occurs. So hope this helped you out.